This video is sponsored by Top Up Live. Hey squad, TitoBods here, and you are not mistaken on the thumbnail of this video. For TitoBods, Ramesses is still the king of the Swordsman March, next to King Arthur, of course. Because not everyone is going to have him, and it's easier to get Ramesses than King Arthur without even spending that much money. So in this video, we're going to talk about why Ramesses is the king of the Swordsman March, and of course, TitoBods is going to give you the best current meta lineup for Ramesses and what the builds are. So let's talk about the three current Swordsman March that I think is currently on the top tier in the game. So we have Ramesses, we have Miyamoto, we have pyrrhus. Now let's establish first why Ramesses is the king. Number one, he is still the best versus Miyamoto Musashi, depending maybe on the levels or powers, etc, etc. But if you have the same power, the same access to rings, same access to mounts and everything like that, Ramesses is still going to top your Miyamoto out. Now another thing is that Ramesses right now has a lot more flexibility when it comes to his hero lineups. You can be as tanky as you want with Ramesses with the help of Zhuge and also Confucius. Then you can be as swift and damagey with your Ramesses, with your burst from Scipio's help, and also with Zhuge maybe, or with Confucius. So you can actually also use an old school Ramesses with a Charlemagne, with a Zhuge, or maybe you want an old classic build with a Theodora, and it will still work. That's how Ramesses flexibility can reach. Now with Miyamoto though, the only thing right now that is the best for Miyamoto, to be honest with you guys, this is proven and tested, the best right now for Miyamoto still is Miyamoto with Scipio and Lagertha. If you're going to change the build, for example changing a Scipio or a Lagertha with a Tribuana or a Yodit, it feels like you are kind of downgrading or decreasing the value overall output of your marches, and no one is really doing that. Unlike, as I've said, with your Ramesses, he is very flexible. So that's another advantage for your Ramesses. And if in the battlefield a Ramesses faced a Miyamoto, the only defining factor that a Miyamoto can win is either because of his power. That's actually just the one thing that your Miyamoto can do against your Ramesses. But on a head-on collision with a fair fight against a Ramesses, I'm 100% sure that Ramesses is always going to top a Miyamoto Musashi. Now, with pyrrhus though, there are only a few builds with your pyrrhus that can actually work. And to be honest with you guys, Miyamoto versus pyrrhus is like a 50-50 battle, or on a fair fight for me, depending also on the build of pyrrhus's commanders or heroes. Pyrrhus only has a limited pool because not every one in the hero pool of the tactician swords actually does help pyrrhus. So there are a few that TitoBods have made on the long list of the contents that we have right now. If you want to check them out, pyrrhus is really best, to be honest with you guys, with Zhuge and Charlemagne. So that march is for TitoBods the ultimate damage and sustain combination, even against a Miyamoto march that really do. If you are using a Confucius though with a pyrrhus, it will also work in a way, but it's not like how your Ramesses would work. So it's a different scenario. You can use your pyrrhus with a Charlemagne and with a Confucius, and it will still work. It is not just like how your pyrrhus would work with Zhuge and Charlemagne. That is based on TitoBods experience. And if you are shocked on that revelation, please leave a link down below in the comments and tell me your thoughts about that. Now let's move on to what I promised. Whoa! Before we continue, if you're planning to top up anytime soon, here's something that can help you keep more money in your pocket while growing your account. TitoBods have partnered with Top Up Live to give you an exclusive 12% off discount extra on your Age of Empires mobile top-ups. That means more Empire coins, more Apex coins, and more value for the same budget. All you have to do is click the link in the description and use the coupon code TITO and enjoy all types of discounts with Top Up Live. And with Top Up Live, your wallet will thank you. So right now, this is TitoBods Ultimate Meta Season 7 build for Ramesses. Still with a Scipio Africanus with a Confucius now instead of Leon. So now we have a very stable March here that really gives off that vibe of damage plus sustainability. Now with Ramesses here, you will always be giving off overwhelming damage through his commander skill by using also his signature skill and with the buffs of the customizable skills. Now with Scipio, you have a 30% damage reduction from his signature skill, plus of course the ability to do some crits and the extra damage that is also given from his signature skill plus his customizable skill. And of course, TitoBods is using here a debuff, which is a righteous judgment. TitoBods do love that, having a debuff for your opponent. And because of the signature skill of your Scipio Africanus, extra activation chances for both Ramesses and Confucius, because Scipio does give extra bonus activations for active skills for both of the other two heroes, and we're going to check that out in a bit. Now Confucius with his continuous healing ability, especially after 5 stars, does give you a huge amount of sustainability. So here we have Ramesses. Here are the skills that you want for your heroes. These are the skills of Ramesses. You got your hands on the Flame of Genesis and Strategy Master's Gift. The bots didn't really imagine any other skill that's going to be right for Ramesses, but those are the skills that is always present that gives off the best value. Now we have here for Scipio Africanus, these are the skills. You have your Righteous Judgment and you have your 1-1 army, which is one of the best skills here. Now TitoBods won't be mad really if you have King's Blade in here, but for TitoBods, this is actually the best one for you in this March. Now, given that you are debuffing the opponent with less might and strategy, because of the less strategy, you will have more damage during that time. And when you crit during those times with your Ramesses, plus if your Ramesses is already at the stage of his commander skill, you will do a lot of damage. Now with your Confucius, these are the builds. So you have your Spring Breeze and your Peaceful Haven. Now those are the only skills that TitoBods think is the best, especially for this March. Now you have observed the rings already. We have the Skyward Knight here, the Tranquil Water, and the Serpent Ring. Now for the Tranquil Water here, sometimes TitoBods do change this to either the Ring of Swirling Tempest or the Ring of Lofty Mountain. So those are the other rings that you want. For low spenders, mid spenders that has this exact build and kinda saving up for rings, you can use the Lofty Mountain instead, or Tranquil Water, because both have the same amount of Jeweler's Mark. And you can save up for the Skyward Knight. It does really help this March overall output. Now, if you don't have the Skyward Knight in here, what you can use is another sustain, which is the Ring of Falcon. It also helps out this March. Now, another thing that you can use that is on the down low, that is kind of a sleeper, as what TitoBods can say, is actually the Ring of Crow. The Ring of Crow also helps this March that way. So if you are on a budget build, Ring of Crow or Ring of Falcon can actually be good for your Confucius, and TitoBods have tested this out in the Pioneer server. It also works that way. Now here, if you have those two in there, I would prefer going for the Lofty Mountain here or the new ring. And still for your Ramesses, TitoBods will still go for the Ring of Serpent, for this really provides you with the right amount of strategy to boost your marches out there. Now let's go with the gears. So we have the gems here. For TitoBods, we want 4 health. So we have 4 health here. You have strategy gems, which is always going to be there. Now also we have active skill here and the combination of the 3 gems. Now for your Scipio Africanus, TitoBods opt in for troop capacity here, might here to increase your might bonuses, plus increase your damage output that your Scipio can provide for your Ramesses, and also of course the criticals. So you also have here healing, which TitoBods think is pretty good. If you're not for the healing, you want normal attack. And since TitoBods is using a Righteous Judgment instead of King's Blade in here, I don't want, of course, the turn-based skill here. But if you're using the King's Blade, you can use a turn-based skill gem in here. So these are the combinations also of the gems. Now, the difference is that I'm using a defense gem in here. So for TitoBods, I need like 4 to 6 troop capacity. So I have another troop capacity here, 3 troop capacity for your Confucius. Then of course, if you still have strategy gems, you can use strategy gems with your Confucius. But if not, you can go for all attributes gems. Your healing gems is the number 1 choice. Now, next up here is combinations of those, or you can do what I did with the normal attack. Now, the normal attack can go to your Scipio and then another healing here. Plus, this also can go to your Scipio and add in here another strategy or another attributes. Now, here I do always have at least one attack gem that actually helps off the damage output of the troop. So those are the gems that you can use for your entire Ramesses march. Now going for the mounts. So for the mounts of your Ramesses number 1, TitoBods do suggest or recommend the Spirit Bond. Now another thing that you can use here is the Army Thunder, or you can use your Dustbane. Dustbane though is only applicable on attacking other heroes in the battlefield. So you don't really need to go to rally because Ramesses really is not for rally. So Dustbane is quite a good choice if you don't have Army Thunder or Spirit Bond, and always choose the highest rarity. Now for your Scipio Africanus, you can either go for Lifesaver, which gives you damage reduction, or you can also go for Healing Armor. Now Healing Armor will help everyone in the march that can receive extra healing. So it's also going to be good for you for the healing of your Scipio, for the healing also of your Confucius. And for your Confucius also, Lifesaver is another one that TitoBods recommend, and then Healing Armor also. If you have combinations of those, it's really a good thing. Now, another thing for your Confucius is Renewal. So if whichever for the Healing Armor or Renewal that you have the highest rarity of, you should use that trait. Now let's go for your adornments. So for your Ramesses, the best that TitoBods can actually give you is either Calculation, or you can use your Headhunter if you think that you will only have one hero opponent. And to be honest with you guys, the least that I am suggesting or going to recommend is the Starling, because Calculation does have the damage extra, which is really needed for this march. And with because once your critical hits, you will add that damage or percentage of damage to those criticals. So unlike your Starlink, so you will already leave off those damage percentages for your extra critical damage, because you will always have those critical, believe me. So also same thing for your Headhunter, although the Headhunter I think is a free-to-play player friendly, because it has higher damage percentage, and you don't really need to go as far as purple. If you want to, you can already have your Headhunter at still max out blue maybe to get 10% at least of damage, and it really helps a lot. The adornment of your Scipio and of course your Confucius, I do recommend the defensive adornment, which is the Mystic Mirror. Then you get your hands on resistance. So that's still for me the number 1 for your one adornment at least. And then another one here, what TitoBods recommend is actually the resistance also, or mutual aid, and make sure it is a Mystic Mirror again to actually give you that damage reduction. But right now this is what we have, so we're going to stick with it. So another thing that you can use if you want to be a little bit more offensive and draw some luck in there is the natural selection. So with the natural selection, you can either get your hands on extra damage for 3 seconds or extra defense for 3 seconds also. So if you want the roll of the dice, go for this one, especially if you have one. It also helps out. The only thing is the timing of the critical. When it does time in with the critical of your Ramesses, it actually does a ton of damage, but when it doesn't, it actually do still a huge amount of damage. So it's like an extra buff together with your Ramesses, and it really does once you have that extra damage for your critical. So that's why TitoBods is using it currently right now. So those are the builds for your Ramesses, Scipio, and Confucius. Now the last part of the build is of course the mercenary. If you have multiple mercenaries like TitoBods, we do want to change them from time to time depending on your opponent. So that's one thing. So if you're up against a Lubu or maybe a strong might hero, use your French throwing axeman. If you're up against another strategy hero, or you really want extra damage, you go for your Persian Immortal. The Japanese Samurai though is not really the best for me. Sometimes I do just use that when I am lazy to actually switch from Persian to French, because your Japanese Samurai can help you with permanent 2% damage reduction from any types of troops, and also do give you just 1% of extra activation chance of your active skill, and it helps sometimes. But that's how I want you guys to think of your mercenaries. But if you're going to ask me what your priority should be, if you have only one choice, why not just go for the French throwing axeman, so that you know the main damage threat for your swordsman here is really your Lubu, and they are might heroes, so French throwing axeman will really help a lot in the process. So that's our build for your Ramesses, Scipio, and Confucius. And TitoBods think this is the number one. Damage is to sustain meta right now in the game, and TitoBods know that there are a lot of other builds there and other opinions regarding what is the top meta right now for Ramesses, but TitoBods is telling you this based on experience, based on what we have in the past. I want your guys' opinions in the comments down below on what you think is the best tier or the best hero for your swordsman, and we're going to talk about it. If you want more deep dive into builds and hero compositions, click the video on your screen right now. And as always, squad, have a great day too, everyone. This is your TitoBods, and I will see you in the next one.